All right, guys. Thanks everyone for attending my class today. Get right to it. We're going to be talking about a very simple, easy to implement planning system. Okay, so out of curiosity, just to kind of get a feel for the room today, how many of you guys are actually producing reports or in plans for your business? How many of you have a strategic plan in place in your business?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. So you'll notice I didn't say business plan, right? And I want to make sure that we don't have confusion around what it is that we're going to be talking about today. To me, a strategic business, like a strategic business plan, is essentially a one-page document, all right, that we're going to go through that allows you to actually communicate what results you're looking for from to your team. Okay, so it's largely to do with accountability. And what I've found that is most important is as CEOs, I think that we sometimes struggle with taking something very complex and making it simple for our team to digest. Okay, so oftentimes we either over communicate or we kind of have an accountability issue that occurs because we're not making things simple for our team to understand. So the best way I can explain it is, I've had my own personal experience where, I've talked to my sales reps for weeks about how important it was to increase sales by XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Like, and, we would have extended conversations, but when it came down to it, the thing never happened. Right. And why was that? Like, it wasn't like they didn't hear me or they didn't see me. Like, and really what it was is because there was no direct, clear objective to share with them. And there was no way and what I wasn't doing and wasn't practicing is measuring the results, measuring the outcomes. Okay. So, one of the ways that we kind of combated this was simplifying the process. If you're going to be sharing a plan with your team, all right, if you're going to be strategically planning, you got to remember that this is something that's going to be working and evolving. But I would keep it short, keep it to the point, and we're going to go through that today. Okay. It's not supposed to be a long, complicated process. Does anybody understand why it should be so short and to the point? Anybody have an idea?
Easier to delegate then? Easier for somebody else to fill out or do?
Close. Yeah, pretty close. So if we make it complicated, all right, and sometimes as owners, we have that tendency to make things overly complicated, all right, what's the likelihood of us actually um, doing it regularly? What's the likelihood of that?
No, not at
Very
all.
little, right? It's just another thing we have to do. Okay, so the whole idea here, guys, is to take something that is, in most people's eyes, complicated. Okay, and we want to try and make it as we we can do without a lot of burden. All right, but the power of it, okay, and I always talk to you guys about this. The return on your investment for your time is astronomical. Okay, the clarity that it brings, the accountability that it can bring. All right, especially as you're bringing on team and thing. All right. I want everyone to think today about the type of leadership they're providing their team. Okay. Are you a task-based leader or are you an objective-based leader? Okay. Because a task-based leader, what they tend to end up with is people very highly dependent on them. They're going to constantly feel like they're the center because they are. They inadvertently train their team to depend on them for everything. Why? Because they have to go to them for everything. Right? Meaning that we're pushing away problem solvers. We're pushing away people that can think for themselves. All right? So a lot of this is about how do we develop our team? How do we get people around us and surround ourselves with leaders and solvers rather than having ourselves surrounded with people that directly need us to tell them what to do. All right. And there's another problem that occurs. Many of you may have people on your team capable of being good leaders. All right. But they're put into consistent situations where it's not in their interest to really take things on their own, and they may even be afraid of the repercussions if they don't follow your tasks. Right. What's that lead to? Okay, so I want you guys to think while we're going through this, like, what kind of leadership do you want to have in your business? Because I'll promise you, I mean, being a task-based leader will get you so far. And yes, you can, I've seen it in businesses in around in the $1 million mark, you can still kind of be that dictator. But going beyond that, all right, and if you want to have a business that actually you have freedom within, there is no place for that kind of it completely breaks down. all right? Because you have to actually work through people, all right? And at a certain point, you have to actually have leaders that lead your teams, okay? So you have to learn to lead leaders. I want to put it to you like this. If every single day I came to you and told you to do something, I mean, how long would it take for you to really resent me? How many would just tell me to fuck off in the first place? Right?
Wouldn't take long, that's for sure.
For sure. So, but then we are frustrated when our team can't problem solve. Oh man, they always call me for everything. They always do this. You got to take a good hard look at yourself and how you're actually communicating, how you are, how you're setting yourself up. And again, this doesn't have to be complicated. So let's have a look at this. Okay. So I don't think anyone would probably disagree with me, but maybe. First thing is if you're not growing, you're dying. Okay. So just remember that this is all about growth. If you want growth in your business and you don't want to kill yourself doing it, all right, we have to be committed to it. So planning allows us to grow. All right. It removes a lot of the emotional stoppers that get in the way of us actually, pushing through and creating growth within our business. So again, in terms of motivation, this is all about growth. All right. If you don't want to grow, don't bother planning. Just keep doing what you're doing. You stay in your comfort zone, you'll be good. Right. Growth happens to you when you have good products and skills without you even trying to influence it well, and can negatively affect your business if it's not controlled. Okay. Growth is the process of planning for it is a great way to train employees on all areas of the company and developing future leaders. All right. And growth helps us to make more profits. Who wants to make more profits here? All
Me?
right. Okay, cool. I didn't think anyone would object to that, but again, there's finesse that goes into this, right? So do you want to make more profit and work 120 hours a week?
Heck no.
No. Okay, cool. So what we should be saying is how do we work less, make more, right? That's the ultimate kind of
Correct.
thing that we want to be in. So and again, this is where planning comes into play, right? So does anybody believe that you can run a $3-4 million business without doing any planning at all?
No way.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
So we all agree that
Jay,
yeah,
I got a question, Jay. I
sure.
think most of the problem, the question that you asked a while ago, I think most of the problem is that nobody wants to be the answer man in the business. I mean, nobody. If
Hmm.
they do, they're crazy.
Right.
Everybody wants the business to run, but the problem is being able to create enough details so that your men can do their job. Because if anybody wants to be the answer man, they're crazy.
I love that you brought that up. Thanks for sharing that with me. So
Yeah.
you said the amount of detail. All right. So again, that sounds to me like you've taken on the burden of being that come-to man, right? So um, do you feel like if you had somebody that was, accountable to those details, right? So like let me
Oh, yeah.
maybe ask you this. If I were to come into your business right now, would it and let's say that I'm a 10 out of 10 project manager. Okay. I'm the best there ever was, there ever will be. I'm a legend. Okay. Hypothetically. All right.
Yeah.
How long do you think that I would exist in that business being task-based or being, where an owner isn't able to give me an objective,
Not very long.
right? Not very long. Why did you guys start a business in the first place? Right? Was it because wanted to work 24 hours a day?
Heck
No.
No.
no, I wanted freedom.
Right,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay. But chances are somewhere along the line in the last company that you maybe worked for, or, there was probably some micromanaging. There was probably other things that rubbed you the wrong way at some point, and we all have bad employers. We've all worked for bad people that micromanaged, right? So the question here is like
Right.
micromanagement is a symptom of your leadership. Like you have to micromanage if you're incapable of communicating as an objective and you're incapable of attracting yourself leaders. Managers micromanage, right? CEOs are the leaders of the company, right? So there is place for it, but there's, in your business, if you want to have fast growth, you want to have consistent growth, all of you will have to become objective-based leaders at one point. Okay. There's just no way around it. And again, I see businesses day in and day out, and a lot of the time what we find is that the owners made themselves the center of that business. Okay. And they can't figure out how to get people to take on these responsibilities that they have. All right. And really what it is they're in their own way. They probably do have the talent, but they're not willing to at least give it a try. And the other side is they're afraid of them failing. All right. Well, how many of you guys have learned or just came into business and had all the answers and were perfect? How
No.
many of you guys here? How many of you guys are still learning? Right?
None.
Every
So-
day.
I've been in it 30 years.
So here's the issue that comes up, right? So like we have an expectation that somebody should be kind of perfect out the gate, or like somebody should be, you know, being able to contribute right away, but we don't give them the support. We don't give them the freedom to actually make those mistakes. I'll tell you, one of the most important lessons I ever learned in business and probably in life, all right, is the humility to stand by, know somebody's making a mistake and let them make it anyways. All right. So again, and I've had to do that many times where I'm not the I'm not the firefighter. It's not my job to go in and put out fires. It's not my job to go in because the second I do that, all right, I then what become the go-to. All right. I have to let people have their way. I have to like again, in my own business, one of the hardest things for me to learn was to let those things go in a controlled way, right? And even today, I have managers that challenge me and I invite it, right? I have managers that challenge me that, oh, I know this is the right way. Now I've tried it 100 ways. I know for a fact that it is not my job to insist that they do it my way. Because the second I do, I'm no longer being an objective-based leader and I'm not building future leaders. I'm building people that are dependent on me and that are afraid to take chances, afraid to take risks, afraid to innovate or change in any sort of way, right? That's not helpful in growth, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Question for you. So
Yep.
early last year, my operations manager um, wanted to manage in-house labor, and I insisted or I suggested strongly that he moves to subcontractors.
Yeah.
Um, I gave him about 2 to 3 months to try his way and screw it up, and then I had to
Mhm.
coach through that mistake.
Yep.
That was very hard and painful because like the cost and the opportunity cost of the business could have been
Hmm.
50 to 150,000. I don't know exactly what it was. So like, how do you work through that pain personally? And then once you've made that investment into that individual,
Hmm.
retaining that person for the institutional value.
Great question. So first of all, again, this is going to kind of tie into what we're saying. So it's the way that you approach them doing something on their own. All right. So like you should always be open to someone helping you change the business or improve it. Okay. So it sounds like that was the intention behind it. Great. Okay. So now we're going to set a report card for this. All right. So again, we always want to be able to use numbers and to be able to use a system versus us having gut feelings about it. Right. So again, when we're talking about planning, it needs to tie to a KPI. So what I would have done to him has been like, hey, that's a great idea, man. When do you think that I could see, an improvement? In which area of the business would I be able to measure the impact of this change? And at what point do we both agree that it was a mistake at that point? Like if this KPI is off, again, and you would use production KPIs there, right? So like if our intention was to do more work at a lower cost, that's immediately clear on the report, right? So and he's going to bring that information to you. He's going to have the humility of saying, "Hey, you know what? We're not on," right? And this is the whole point about accountability is that you got to remove the things that often stop most of us, right? Like if you knew without a doubt that, option A is going to work, all right, and option B is not going to work, obviously you're going to take option A, right? In business, we have that same opportunity, right? We can test something, we can take a short, all right, but we have to have a way of knowing for sure and measuring it to be able to manage it, right? It's very simple process. And again, what you want to start to develop in your business is people that come to you with their idea and then also tell you how they're going to measure it, how it should improve the company, all right? And then hold themselves accountable to that objective, right? Because now you're not going back to them saying, I told you so, I told you, right? Like that's not a very good form of leadership. All right. I told you, you coulda, you shoulda, all that stuff. below the line, right? People don't respond to it. It's just like me coming to you. They're going to shut down and they're never going to want to try and take this risk again. They're just going to come to you from now on. They're like, you've killed that opportunity. Now, if you can both agree to the risk and say, hey, you know what, this is worth the try. You go through it, it didn't work. Okay. All right. Now we're absorbing that loss together and we know what's not going to work. And we've just developed that person. They now have more trust in you. All right. And in the business. And really, it should be more focused on the business. Like, hey, we tried that, didn't work. No problem. Right. So now we can cross that off and, you know, they're going to be willing to try something in the future as well in that process. Does that make sense? Right. So again, when we get into this strategic report, we're gonna kind of go through that, right? And your job, by the way, as the CEO, I mean, besides the number one responsibility, which is to produce a profit for the shareholder, all right. Second to that is to lead your teams. Okay. So you can't lead your teams well um, by having to dictate every single day, right? By the brains of the operation. And if frankly, you're just going to burn out, right? So, you know, there is no successful company that hasn't built it on leadership. There is no successful company that, you know, can completely operate off of you know, task-based leadership styles, right? Now, micromanaging, all these kind of things that come into play, right? It actually keeps us stuck. All right. And I see this a lot with owners that refuse to take certain hats off, right? Owners that refuse to, you know, let somebody else try sales or let somebody else, and comes from is the fear of failure, right? And we can all admit to that. We don't want to fear. Siavash, it sounds like you had a bit of that too, right? Like the pain of that not making that money or the pain of the loss, right? But really, I would reframe it another way, right? Like, yeah, you made the investment in the person. If you're using the data, all right, that mistake is never going to be repeated again, right? We can validate it now, right? So again, you know, how often would it come up? And maybe you learned something from it as well that we can, you know, apply. So there there's always benefit as long as you're looking at it like an engineer, right? And I know you have an engineer's mindset, so like, you know, we should be looking at anything we're planning as having impact in our direction we want to go. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's take a look at a sample, what a strategic page plan. So most of you guys that are in our program would have done one of these with us. All right. But I want to kind of go through and demonstrate to you why these things are important. Okay. So starting off with the overall objective. Okay. Let's say that our goal is 3.5 million and with a 15% net without being pulled into the day-to-day operations. Would anybody be against that? Perfect. All right. Now, what we want to do is actually add conditions to that now, right? So that's our big vision, our big goal. If this happened, like I could say that I crushed this, right? Like I'm cool, right? Cool. So now we know that everything below that has to be able to function and be able to take in that message and be working towards that goal. All right. Now, if you asked your foreman if that was important to him, that you made 3.5 million at 15% net without being pulled in do you think that he would give a shit about that? Would you care if somebody told? No, of course not, right? So this is top line is your goal. This is your vision. This is what the company, you know, wants to do to succeed. And don't be afraid to share these things, by the way. It's a big mistake to think that you shouldn't be sharing these. This should align with your core values, right? Like, does anybody want to be in a non-profitable company? Do you think that your employees want to work for a non-profitable company? Do you not think that sort of presents a risk for them?
No,
Right? Do
they
they don't
don't
want to
want
have really like insecurity about if they're going to have a job next week, next month, next year? Like, do they want to imagine just going to a company that has no plan for the future?
no.
No direction? Okay. How many of you guys are mistakenly creating this environment right off the bat by being afraid to share these kind of things?
Yep.
Okay. So again, a lot of this is head games with yourself, right? I've had this argument with owners up and down about whether they should share their numbers or not. My opinion is, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not hiding anything. In fact, I'm going to be as clear as, and you know what? My actual core value is profitability. No, I'm going to take it to the next level. Like, should you be working in a non-profitable company? No, right? Should that not be something that drives the motivation and attracts the people to our business? If I'm bringing in charity workers, I'm going to get charity results. right? So again, you need to be clear about these, all right? At least with your upper management. If you, and again, as you guys add people to your team, production managers, anybody that's going to help you run your business needs to be aware of these things, and you need to be clear about it. All right, don't hide it. Don't you have no shame in people knowing these things. All right, and if anything, it's going to help you to get to the goal because you're being honest. All right, you try to avoid it, and I've seen lots of guys try and do that by dressing it up. Like, people know, they're not stupid, right? So I mean, I just come at it very straightforward, right? To which his own, though. So next you want to decide, like, what is the hourly rate that I need to be at, or what is the value of my time, right? According to this plan, right? Take those numbers and visualize them. So first of all, what salary you're paying yourself, right? This is the business. What salary are you going to pay yourself? 100 grand, 120 grand, right? To do what you're doing inside of what hat you're wearing, all right? Your net profits, all right? And then the amount of hours you want to work and how many weeks you want to work at it, right? So voila. And for most of you guys in the program, I do this on purpose so that you recognize you cannot afford to do $20 an hour tasks. You can't afford to do $50 an hour tasks. Shit, you can't afford to do anything but $1,300 an hour tasks, or the business is failing. And how easy is it to delegate now? Right? My time's worth $1,300 an hour. I can't problem solve for my project manager. Are you crazy? Like, all of a sudden the view you have and the things you will tolerate change dramatically, right? Because you're actually losing money. So the importance of finding someone and the risk, I guess, that you would take on training someone, like, at bleeding money, if I'm doing the project manager's role every single hour, I'm going to be a lot more motivated to find a project manager for sure, right? So the next part of this process here is to really look at, and we're looking 90 days into the future. We're looking 90 days ahead of where we are currently and where we want to be, right? And the more and more you become disciplined to this, the more you can call your shot. And that's a pretty cool thing, right? The more your team can help you call the shots. Okay. So the next is, let's look at the strengths. What are the strengths of this company? What things are giving us an unfair advantage? All right. Because a lot of times, what I've seen happen is a company has an unfair advantage in something that they don't even take advantage of, right? Maybe you have great project management. Maybe you have, amazing marketing and sales, but here they are tripping around on operations, right? They don't recognize even that they have a strength that's, gives them an unfair advantage. For most of you guys that are here, you would all have an unfair advantage. That's why you're here. That's why you can afford to be here. You're not on the tools anymore, right? What is that thing that people notice your business that stands out from everyone else? All right. And again, I'm just using these as examples, but understand those things and work to continue to make those strengths, right? Don't forget these things as you start to grow your business. And that happens all the time. A company that was once great at sales, owners stop selling, all of a sudden that becomes their weakness. Oops, we got a problem, right? Sales dropped this quarter. What happened? Where do we need to focus the energy to get it back? Right? And sometimes the funniest thing about my job is, most of you guys, I have to look at your watch and tell you what time it is, right? And a lot of my job is doing, and all right, but it's the way that you're getting it out and the commitment that you have to understanding what these things mean, right? So maybe your weakness is sales closing, delegation of responsibilities, accountability, all types of things. And this is a really good chance for you to ask your team what those things are, right? Get their buy-in, get their feedback, agree on these things. These are our weaknesses. These are our strengths. Okay. Now, we also have an opportunity to exceed the plan, right? So why do 3.5 when we could do 5? Right? What do those opportunities look like? Those things that you talked about but haven't done. All right, I was just on the phone with someone that we were talking about a club agreement. 1,500 clients that he has, right? Never sold a club agreement. We're going to start selling a club agreement, right? Is that an opportunity to exceed the plan? Of course. I explained to him pretty clearly. Like, had you implemented this, you've known about it for years and wanted to do it for years. 1,500 clients ago, you'd be sitting on the beach in the Bahamas right now, right? That's the reality. You've served 1,500 clients, right? Had you sold this agreement, I mean, you would be in a totally different spot, right? But something idea or something tossed around, now we're only getting to implement it, right? So that's an opportunity, and as long as it's in front of your eyes, you have the opportunity to take advantage of it, right? We can always do better in sales and closing, right? We can always get larger projects. You know, there's always these opportunities around us, surrounded in opportunity, are we not? Has anyone ever seen more opportunity at any time in their lives as they do now? I certainly do, right? And I think we're in a point in history where there's never been this amount of opportunity, right? There's more money in a 10-kilometer radius than you guys could ever imagine collecting, right? So let's keep that in mind that we need to be, you know, we need to be in a growth mindset, but we have to see things for where they are as well. We want our team to see those big things too. This is your opportunity to show them. Okay. And then, of course, we always got to look at the threats, right? Yin and yang, right? What are the threats to making this plan, right? What things will bring us down? And, you know, I always put this, you know, almost standardly on everyone's form is that owners burn out, right? We lose our momentum, all right? Everything we are talking about here today involves change, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I get to see people take big changes and small changes every day. Ain't none of them easy. Ain't none of them are done, you know, done with comfort and enjoyment. All right. You're pretty sick if you do, because it means you've reprogrammed your brain somehow to fight evolution. Okay. We're all programmed to resist change. We're all, again, it's a primal part of our brain. You're not supposed to like it. All right. That's what keeps us safe and, you know, prevented us from getting eaten by lions on the savannah. Okay. So again, understand, you know, there's threats to these things, really very real threats. All right. And you've got to be honest with what those things are. And you got to get your team to open up and be honest about what those threats look like as well. Okay. Now, here's one of my favorite parts to all of this. We all got ideas. Your team has ideas. You know what I love to say? I want all of those ideas, but don't you dare come to me and talk to me about those on a production meeting. Don't you dare come to me and suggest those in a, you know, an operations call, on a sales. I don't like, there's a time and place for everything. Okay. Your ideas are valuable to me and they're valuable to this company, but we're going to designate a time where you could share those ideas and we're going to document them and we're going to capture them and we're going to decide as a team whether we go forward with those or not. All right. Some of the most productive time that I've had, all right, is really giving people a space and time where they can think about these things and come to you and provide you with that idea or things to do. All right. Even when working with you guys. All right. I'm always amazed at the things, how self-aware most owners are. Right. How quickly they, you know, when asked the right questions at the right time, how quickly they can respond to these things. But we all have ideas, things we want to do. Right. How many of you just torture yourself with them? They're just rattling around in your head. Fuck, I wish I'd done that, right? Everybody. I talk to all of you guys. So I know that that's what's happening. And the problem with that, guys, is it literally creates a chemical reaction in your body and it creates a chemical that, you know, puts us in a state of anxiety. All right. Even excitement puts us in a state of anxiety. And when we're in a state of anxiety, all right, that's when we're looking at the future. Okay, that's when we're our head's stuck in the future, and you guys wouldn't be here if you didn't have that part. All right, nothing new or creative can happen in that place. Nothing new or creative, right? You're not learning nothing. You're not doing anything differently. That's where most of you guys are stuck, right? Once that cortisol starts flowing, game over, right? We can have the idea, but there's no execution. There's no learning it. There's no legitimate way to get there, right? And then on the other hand, we had all these great ideas and all these things we wanted to do. They accumulated so much, and your team the same way, that now we're dwelling on them. We're disappointed that they didn't happen. That's a state of depression. Once again, nothing new or creative happens in that state of mind. Okay? Where do things happen? Where's the real magic happen? When we're present. When we're present, we can focus on those things. Okay? So get your team present. Get them, you know, with a designated time where they can bring these ideas to the place. And it's also a way that, you know, now we can sit and actually put what matters in place, right? We can use these as reminders, and you're going to see in a second how the accountability part works, right? So with that yin and yang, what are we going to stop doing? Right? I love this question the most because my team tells me, I don't tell them, right? You guys tell me, I don't tell you, right? You know what you need to stop doing. I'm not with you every day. I don't hold your hand, right? But when do you get that place to think about those things? What do I need to stop doing in order to get the things I want? Right? What does my team need to do? Now, you need to stop doing that. Just stop doing that. Like, you do more accounting, do more bookkeeping, damn it. You'd be fine if you just do your bookkeeping. You'd be great. How many of you would respond well to that? Right now, ironically, if I ask you, like, well, what do you think the problem is? Oh man, I just don't see my numbers. I don't like, but problems. Like, I mean, I already know it, but like, I have to get you to open up to tell me those things, and then we can come up with a plan. And it's both of our idea. All right, it's both of us sharing in that opportunity to improve. Okay, your team is the same way, right? Most people and anyone you should have in management is the exact same way. They don't want to be told what to do, right? They want to be involved in decisions that affect them, right? So give them that opportunity, allow them the space. All right. They're going to help you to see things and be open. Don't, one thing is very important to this when you're doing this with a team. Okay. Again, you're not the firefighter. You're not there to dock anybody's ideas down. All right. You're there as a coach. All right. You want to coach this out with your team. You want them to get in the practice and the habit like I do with you guys. Okay. So now that we've got those kind of things out of place, now we're going to really sort of look at what are the rocks and the accountability that need to happen this quarter, all right? And what are the projects that are going to move us forward, right? So if our goal, all right, was to do 875,000, all right, then we need to make some adjustments. We need to make some changes, okay? And if all the team agrees what those changes are, beautiful, okay? But then we need to actually for us to get to the big objective, now we need to get it down to the level of how does my team help me get to this target? How can they contribute to it? All right. This is where now we're going to look at what projects need to be done. Well, we need a project manager. We need to onboard a driver. We need roles and responsibility. Like all of these things will contribute to us getting to that goal or not. Would you agree? All right. The next thing on that is that we're going to actually put people's names beside these things. Right? Here's where the accountability starts to happen. Okay. Great idea. If we just had a project manager to run these projects, says the salesman. Yeah, no, I agree, says the operations manager. Awesome. All right. Who's going to be responsible for hiring this person? Who's going to benefit from it? Right. Now we're tying people to those specific things, right? Operations manager. Yeah, I can make the hire. Hey, you know what? We need a better onboarding program. Great. Like who's going to be tasked with that? Who's going to own that part of this project? Okay. We want to create that. And if we can at times make this our team's idea, even better. All right. No one ever like if you tell them, all right, it's debatable. All right. It's a thing that you've told them to do. If they tell you, all right, and they give you the facts, it's their idea. And that's perfect. Right? That's what you want. You want it to be their ideas. You want them to be excited about taking these things on and to own it. All right. But it's again how you approach it. So these are all things that we want to accomplish. And some of them you'll do it, some of them you won't. No big deal. All right. But the fact is that we have plan and direction. And we can also remind people of those responsibilities, those commitments. All right. And as we break this down, you'll see how we turn this into an accountability for everybody, because this is what it's all about. You need people to buy in on the plan. You need people to be very clear about how they can help you to get from point A to point B, or help themselves get from point A to point B. All right. This is also where you're going to have the most interesting conversations, and I assure you that, right? Just like in sales, somebody can tell you an objection. All right. You've got to be prepared to handle the objection from your team here as well. Right. So, I mean, healthy arguments, healthy discussion, all that stuff is good for a team. Don't avoid that. Conflict, all those things in a controlled way. And this is where you're going to find it, right? One person's going to think it's one direction. One person's going to think it's the other direction. Great. My opportunity now to step in as the coach and the facilitator is just gone through the roof, right? And I've had this happen many times. So again, Siavash, we'll take your situation, for example, right? First thing I would do if two people are at head, I'm going to have somebody that is not connected be the facilitator, and we're going to play pros and cons, right? We're going to discuss it in a way that allows for the team to make an educated decision, right? So if one person's disagreeing, one person's agreeing, that's actually good for the plan. All right. You want that. You want healthy debate. You want people to be skeptical. You want devil's advocate. You want those things to a point. All right. So again, you know, there's a balance to this. But again, somebody brings up an idea, all right? Our job's not to say, no, that's stupid, we're gonna knock it down. No, no. All right. If you feel as powerful about that idea, let's go through this process now of deciding whether it makes it on the plan or not. Okay. How is this going to contribute to production quality? Or how is this going to, contribute to cash on hand? Right? How is this going to contribute to our net profits? How will this improve? Like now we're asking the right questions. If something's not going to improve net profit, something's not going to improve production, all right, then what exactly is it doing?
So
Right?
like, so going back to delegating
Yep.
and coaching,
Mhm.
and playing that devil's advocate
Mhm.
and looking at it from a sales perspective.
Mhm.
So you delegate something. So say you delegate operations to an operations manager.
Mhm.
You have to give them bandwidth to make mistakes.
To a degree,
And then
this would be,
at what point do you let them take leadership and run with things? Like,
right from the beginning, if I can. If that person, if I've hired wisely and that, like, that's the position that they're holding. And again, I'm gonna know at these meetings, by the way, like if I bring somebody out, like same with you guys, right? Like I collect a lot of intel from doing these with you as well, right? But put somebody in a scenario like this, and that you're gonna give them an objective and a problem that you want to solve. See if they can contribute. If your operations can't problem solve, they're not operations, dude. They're just a glorified manager, right? So like that's not an operations manager. If they can and they can contribute and they're coming up with ideas that you agree with and like the team agree with, and that makes sense for the business, right? We've got that balance. Next move to that is let's put it to KPI. Let's decide what it should look like in 1 year or 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, right? So, I mean, and again, I'm going to show you the next side of this, the reporting side of it, right? Think of this as the big, the big goal. Okay. Now, as you'll notice, as we go down this, right, there's indicators. Okay. So again, so a company can say, hey, I want to grow 875,000, but I need $65,000 worth of marketing. Well, that doesn't work, does it? Right. So again, I'm going to look at the things and I'm going to make it clear in my KPIs, what is the acceptable range for these things, right? What should a lead cost? What should our agreements be? How many contracts do we expect? Right? These are very black and white. All right. If we got to the end of the 3 months, it's a yes, we did or no, we didn't. If you leave an area for debate or gray area, you've basically squashed the whole exercise. Right? It has to be black and white. People do not respond well with theoretical and sky ideas, right? So again, thinking about back to your vision or your goal, yeah, I can answer that black or white, more or less, right? But we all know that there's elements to it happening. That's the big goal. Now we have to break it down. Like where would we start to see improvements? Like what would the revenue look like? By when? Okay. So now we're adding, we're adding the accountability to it. All right. And we're also making it super clear to people that, have an invested interest in it. All right. This is also where we would negotiate, right? This is where we'd want to negotiate. If somebody came into my business in a sales rep and he was able to increase and meet this objective, the last 4 quarters, do I owe him the opportunity for a bonus or, to negotiate with me for a higher term? Sure. All right. Absolutely. We can have that talk. But if he hasn't, and he's coming to the table going, hey, you know what? I want more. Like, show me where you had impact. Exactly. Why would you want more? Like, as far as I could see, like you've just, you just sort of kept us at thing. You haven't helped us grow. Right. So in my eyes, that person's not as, and again, in their eyes as well. Right. If you're being shown those things, like where did you have impact? Okay. Same thing with your team as well. Like you have to set the rules. All of this is you setting the rules to the game. Okay. So again, when we get to core values, how many of you guys actually use your core values to lead your teams? How many of you guys can actually, discuss those with your teams or hold someone accountable with those? How many of you have been held accountable to your own core values? I know I have, right? Where someone will call me out in a certain situation, right? I know I've had it happen in Contractor AI as well, right? Are we delivering on our mission? Are we delivering on our values? And I have to be like everybody else, right? It's either yes, I am, or no, I'm not, right? The same thing with your core values. So don't miss these things, right? And if you want to attract leaders, if you want to attract people that are going to, you know, have the same energy and the same passion you have in your business, and you don't have these things, okay, it's not going to happen. I mean, just reality is, put yourself, if you're the A player, right, and most of you guys are, all right, what environment would you most thrive in? A place with no core values, no purpose, no like direction, no idea of what coming. No, you'd be out of there quick, right? So are you inadvertently creating an environment in your own business where this is happening? Probably, right? So let's get clear about these things. Let's be committed to, you know, what these things actually mean, because again, it prevents the problems down the road. Okay? It allows us to have guardrails. All right? And if you're trying to run a business without guardrails and out without fail safes, okay, yes, the owner is going to eventually be the one that takes the burden of that, right? That's where risk gets out of control, right? That's where risk is no longer controlled or managed or mitigated. It's where the inmates are running the asylum. Okay? When people are dictating and telling you, like, all that stuff can get out of control. So again, these are also things to bring people back on into line, right? So, you know, let's go through some of my most favorite ones that I've received. You know, work profitably is probably my most favorite. Okay? Is that something you could hold a staff member accountable to? If somebody's wasting, or, you know, somebody's not really, you know, concerned about, you know, how much they drive the truck on the weekend, and, you know, the damage maybe they've caused to trailers and stuff, could you not bring that up and be like, hey man, when you started working with it, we were pretty clear and you signed on and we all agreed to work profitably here, right? Are you living up to that core value? Like, are you a part of our plan still, or like has something changed? Right? Again, quality. Like, if you don't put it out there though, and you're not clear about it from the beginning, and you don't understand the purpose of those things behind it, it's very hard to lead a team, right? It's hard to bring people back as well, right? So again, people can get sideways as well. We're all human, right? We all have that tendency.
It's hilarious how you have to bring that up.
Yeah.
And just break it down. That you're like, listen, one of our values
Mhm.
is you understand we're here to make money.
Right. So do you think I've ever had that conversation? Just about 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
again, you teach other people to say the same thing, right? So you are the reflection of what you're going to get back, right? If you don't have any and you never thought about them, all right, pretty damn hard to guide anybody and have anybody, you know, see you as a leader they trust, right? You're constantly changing the rules to the game, right? If you're saying that, hey, we're going to practice integrity, and then you're running, you know, fraudulent promotions and stealing from customers' deposits, like, you know, that's going to cause you some problems, right? With anybody that's honest and that wants to do it. But more or less, like, these are the things that people want in companies, right? These are the things that you want to be, you know, passed on, right? And it's also what removes you. Like, when we remove you from the business, what carries on? What influence do you have? Right? Most of it's like, once we're gone, right? Like, but if you break it down, it's really the things you stood for, right? People can understand those, and the clearer you get with them, all right, the more likely it is that you'll find people that that practice those things, right? Even if it's subconsciously. And one thing I'm going to bring up, and maybe this is a bit far for this call, and I know I said it would make it simple, but most of you guys, when I talk to you, try to talk to your employees' logical brain. Okay? What I've learned a long time ago is you don't get anywhere with that. All right? Logic has a way, and all of us are resistant to it. It's like sales resistance. Okay? The second you start talking to people logically and in a very logical way, all right, they kind of shut down. All right? It's kind of like you're telling them what to do, right? And they, you know, people tune out. If you learn to talk to people's subconscious, though, their subconscious mind, all right, and what are they really afraid of? Like, if they're working for you, chances are they're afraid the company may one day screw them over, or may not be able to pay for a promotion, or may not have, you know, security that they're looking for. It may be that, you know, they're going to be overlooked, or they're not going to get promotions. Like, all of these things exist in our subconscious. They're not, you know, they're not logically thinking those things at the moment. But by you bringing these things up and practicing them in front of them, all right, we're actually talking to their subconscious, and we're giving them messages immediately that are going to tell them how we want them to be like to behave. All right. And again, this is a little bit upper level, but like if you don't say it, if you don't make it clear, all right, people will never respond to it. All right. Same thing. If you put your core values in the company manual, and it goes under the seat to never be seen again, like of opportunity, number one. But there's no way for people to live to those things. Now, if you bring these up regularly and push them into their subconscious and make that a point, all right, they're actually going to live up to that. They're going to know subconsciously that those are the things that is expected, right? You don't have to tell them anymore. They just automatically do it, right? So again, don't overlook those things. So now let's talk about, we've got our plan, all right? Everybody's on board. We've all high-fived. The meeting's over. Now what? Okay. Now we have to go to work. It's the day-to-day grind, all the other problems that come up. All right. So the next step to this is your cadence in your meetings. Okay. When and where do these things get discussed? And how do we use this now to create an accountability and have people working towards these objectives they've agreed to? Remember, I talked to you about like subconsciously training people. Okay, subconsciously training yourself as well, right? Like your behavior is just as influenced by this as an employee or anybody that's subordinate would be. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next step to this is we've got to set up a meeting cadence. Okay, so we talked a lot about this. I mean, probably blue in the face. I'm not going to get into like, when your meetings and all this stuff should be, but you want to have a minimum, a once a month meeting with your top manager. So if you have a sales rep, we're going to have a sales meeting. And in that meeting, we're going to bring up the sales report. Okay. We set our targets and our KPIs, right? They're going to tell me, yes, they did or no, they didn't. All right. And if there isn't an explanation of what they're doing to change, all right, what they're doing to get back on track, all right, that conversation is going to be short. All right. It's probably going to involve, me making some other management decision or them dismissing themselves. Happens all the time, right? People come in, big ambitious goals. All right. But think about it this way, guys. If you don't have this, how do we know where we stand? How do we know when we're doing a good job and when we're crushing it and when we're doing a shit job? Does our team even feel safe working for us? Like, again, if we did all this first part, and then there was no follow-up to it, it went in the desk and everyone forgot about it, do you think that'd be at all effective? No. It'll have a reverse effect on you, right? People will take you less seriously, and next time you try and implement something, it's not going to happen, right? So my point here is we have to have a regular meeting to review, all right? And again, simple, easy. We did our one-page document. Maybe that took us 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon if you're really putting your head into it, all right? But it's there now, all right? Now my monthly meeting or my weekly meeting to those KPIs or those arrangements we made in that call. Okay. And if you're dealing with management, I don't care if you're dealing with production, you're dealing with sales, there's always got to be a financial review. If we're not, what are we reviewing and what's the indicators that are going to tell us if we're crushing it in sales? Is it time spent at work? Can we tell if we're doing a great job at no. Number of contracts signed? Yeah, that's an indicator, but like, no, it's got to be based on something that actually has meat to it, right? Why would a salesperson care about the revenue in most cases? Why would that be important for them to see? Usually their commissions are tied to it. That's one part of it, right? Okay. Do you guys set revenue goals for your business? Yes, of course, right? And what's the sales person's job in the business?
Bring money in.
Right? Is that what we call revenue?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So we also want to talk about profitability. And again, if you're going to say it in your core values, you best damn be willing to share it. Right. And again, we made it clear in our objective. Now, you're all free to do it whatever way you may feel is appropriate for your business, but I'm always going to lead and I'll never hide what I intend to make as a profit margin. I don't feel like you should. Right. And for managers, now I'm not sharing it all the way down to the field staff, but I am damn well sharing it with anybody that's got a direct influence on whether that happens. Right. And so far, last 15 or 16 years, I've had no issues with it. All right. What we do find, though, is that people get pretty serious about this when you're keeping score. All right. So Out of curiosity, is there anybody here that would like, go out and play a game of football if we just like didn't have a referee, there was no like line of scrimmage, we didn't wear any equipment or anything, there was no real rules. Like, would anybody call that a game of football?
No.
No, right? So what makes a game of football serious?
Referees, rules.
Scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
Why do people get so competitive in those environments? Like, why do we have national football leagues?
Because there's a set goal. Like
Mhm.
there's a prize to be won at the end.
How many of you guys have ever imagined yourselves being pro athletes? Okay. And think about it, like subconsciously, why would you want something like that? It's the competitiveness, right? You get to be the glory. Like there's, if you really are good at something, all right, people will know. It's obvious. It's like well aware. If a team is crushing it and they won, 25 of their last 25 games, how do we know? Well, it's been measured. It's been played the same way, the same process, same procedures. Subconsciously, again, we are programmed this way, right? We're programmed to want to compete. We're programmed to, see the glory in that. And society has taught us those things. So why is this not in your business? Right? If you're going out and not measuring and holding, like we're not playing a serious game, what are we doing? Right? Of course you're going to be the center. Of course you're going to be the key chief firefighter, right? Because nobody's playing to win. They're just there, right? They're playing beer league. You can't play beer league and expect championships, right? Like that just doesn't work. No one's gonna ESPN isn't gonna come and interview if you're in beer league, right? Like, and so you got to think about it the same way. Now, again, if an NFL player went to a beer league, football thing, do you think that there would be? You think he would be overly motivated for that?
No.
No, of course not, right? Once again, even if you attracted that A player, if you don't have these structures in place and you're not disciplined to play at a high level, you're not going to win this game, right? What this guys is none of this stuff is complicated, right? That one-page document, sitting down and being disciplined to go through what numbers matter, right? Now, as we do these cadence reports, again, this is another opportunity for us to practice leadership and to practice, giving people a place to perform. You want to call it the arena, all right? I'm putting them on the field. I'm letting them show me their stuff, right? I'm keeping score, right? I'm the scorekeeper, right? Much easier position to be in, right? You can be, I mean, I've seen lots of, or the commentator. You know what I mean? I don't think any of those guys, I mean, at the end of the day, have an overly difficult job, not as difficult as the athlete, right? So we want to create that environment, all right? And this is how exactly you would do it, even with yourself. Again, if you guys are looking and measuring the right things, not a complicated way, all right? Are you going to know if you're on track or off track? You're going to know you're on track, right? And anybody here really love to lose? Is anyone a natural born loser here? Just loves it?
No.
No. I don't think anybody here could ever imagine saying that either, right? So like you're all winners, right? You all want to win. Okay? But put it logically to yourself. And what is winning? What is the winning? Like what is the definition of winning? Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, getting the freedom to get away from the job, not slaving away 10 hours, 12 hours a day, every day, just to make peanuts and barely skate by.
Right. Okay. So now that's more again when we get really good at this, that's a prayer and a dream. Okay. I ain't taking a prayer and a dream and trying to borrow money from the bank with it, right? So for you to become confident that that thing is actually possible, how many of you ever thought about quitting? Been like, fuck this business.
Sure.
I know I have. Just
Yeah.
probably for a decade every single day. Like, what am I doing? Right? Okay. In those situations, I mean, you're going to either depend on your willpower entirely, right? Or you're going to have, you're going to learn to be objective, right? You're going to learn to be a lot more specific about the things that you want and why they matter, right? So, like, having freedom in your business, like, I'll be honest with you. You know, if you don't develop a system now that allows you that and allows you to measure towards that, all right, that is a ever moving goal line. All right. That's not something you're gonna hit. And I can tell you from my own bottom of my heart, all right. What I thought was like, you know, absolutely killing and what my dream was 5 years ago has dramatically changed. All right. The only thing that hasn't changed is the way I set my targets. Right? Goal setting in general is a useless waste of time, in my opinion. All right? It really is. If it doesn't tie into how we actually get there, if it doesn't have the nuts and bolts of what it is that we're shooting for and like how we're going to measure those things along the way. And more importantly, like how does your team play into this? Right? Even if you don't have a team, how will the future team be able to contribute to this? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So the other way I want you to imagine doing this is like, let's imagine that we do this 4 times a year. Okay, just 4 times a year. We sit down for 2 hours of time, all right, where we look at what it is exactly that we want. Do you think we get better at it?
Of course, repetition, right?
Right? You guys that have done it with me and that I've been doing it for you along the way in our program. Um, you know, it's funny how you forget exactly what we said in that call. I remember, and then when I get there, I have to remind you of like, oh yeah, we hit that target by the way. Like, good for you. Congratulations. Let's celebrate that win. And it amazes me all the time that like, you know, the whole way through, I've had to work with you guys on doubting and wanting to go back and change directions, and we have to hold you accountable to that. That's the only thing that we're doing to get you on track. Because I mean, a lot of you guys can come to the table with all types of different ideas. I've had some of you change the plan several times throughout the small sprint, and I have to pull you back and I have to keep you on track, right? But when we get there, it's like that moment comes where we're like, I did it, right? We've moved up, we've leveled up, right? The more and more you can do that and call your shot, all right, the easier and easier business becomes. Okay. Anybody that's focused on the day-to-day stuff, all right, you're like a ping pong. You know, we're just getting bounced around. If you want to become a CEO, if you want to become a true, visionary for your company and you want to have freedom, start to look at 3 months ahead and be able to call your shot. Be able to predict that thing to happen, right? That's the ultimate control, right? And then remind your team of what they need to contribute for that thing to happen. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have a single takeaway they want to share from what I'm presenting here, and then we'll wrap up with the SOPs as well. Here, share
I
this.
think it's just around like knowing what you want and writing the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's also about imperfect action, guys. I want to stress this to everyone because I think a lot of you guys have this issue. It's like you're waiting for something to be perfect. And in the time it takes you to figure out what perfect is, you could have already done it 10 times. Right? This isn't about being perfect. None of this stuff is about being perfect, okay? And none of you will be perfect when you're doing this. The first time you do it, it's going to be like way off. It's the discipline of doing it though that gets you closer and closer to perfect. Right? It gets you closer to closer. And that's where your confidence comes from. That's where big decisions get made, all right? And I ask you guys this question pretty regularly as well. Like, a lot of you guys stop short of your goal or your target because something changes or a situation evolves, or you get concerned about money or something like that happens and you stop. All right, that's possible to do all the way through business. That's going to constantly be a possibility. But how do you remove that? How do businesses rapidly grow? Right, they remove all the emotional connections that we have, right? There's just no place for them if you want to rapidly grow your business. Like, again, the more you can get to black and white and the more you can build your confidence and your team's confidence in the decisions that you make, the more you can predict ahead. All right, it just becomes a muscle. All right, and again, it's there has to be a clear way to win the game. There's got to be a clear way to play the game. And the more confident you guys get at it, all right, and it's not going to be perfect. Nobody starts off in any business or do at it. Very few people, I will say, right? You're not just tomorrow becoming a pro athlete, right? Takes years of practice and work to get there, does it not? Right. Okay, so take it the same way. Just do it, right? Don't think about it, do it. Don't contemplate if it needs to be this or needs to be that. Just do the thing, and you will see the immediate benefits from it. I promise. It's so simple, it's so straightforward, all right? And it forces your subconscious, all right, to know what it is you want, all right? It starts to remove the noise from your employees' heads, from the business, the insecurities, the things that no one talks about, right? All of that stuff starts to dissipate as you implement this kind of process, right? Now, and I can tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't do it myself, right? Absolutely zero chance. I'd still be back probably on the tools, but grinding it out, right? So what's the difference? How do you evolve? How do you get better? I'm showing you, and most implemented with you, and you're seeing the benefits of it now, right? And it's fun to look back. How many of you 3 months ago told me that they wanted marketing systems and sales systems and everything else? Now they've got them, and like they don't even recognize that those are shots we called, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Cool. Anybody else want to share some takeaways they got from this?
It's basically like kind of starting the business over. We're just grinding again, but we're grinding in a smarter way by laying out the rules, as you said, and
Mhm.
a way to actually beat the game rather than just rolling the dice and hoping for the best.
Right. Well, and it's giving you it's allowing you to be present. Okay. So I don't think that we invest enough in our mindset of present, right? Again, if you're looking at things in a black and white way and you're putting your energy towards the things that you can validate work, all right? How more likely are you to just do those things that work and less likely to do the things you know that don't work?
100%.
Right? But unless you start to keep the score and start to put these things out, you'll never know, right? And I see it every day in all of you guys. Like again, from the outside in on your business, like I can pretty much call the shots that you need to do to get unstuck. But you guys been stuck for years in some of these positions, right? What's kept, right? It's that fear, like of the unknown, of the thing you haven't tried, of like the boogeyman, all these other things that may or may not be there, right? But again, if you don't measure and you can't put these small micro risks and be willing to take a managed risk ahead of your business, you're not going to grow. As simple as that, right? And I'm not the one that came up with this stuff either, guys. Like this isn't out of my head. Like this is Fortune 500 companies do it. Like everyone does it. It works. There's a reason for it, right? It removes that fear, it removes those things that stop us at a certain point from growth, right? So that's a great win. Anybody else? Anybody going to take the SOP and implement it if we haven't already implemented it with you?
Oh, yeah. I already
Okay.
started reading them.
Right. So the other little goodie that I gave you is essentially the agenda for the two calls that would be probably most prevalent for everybody here. An operation manager's call, right? Where you're going to have like a meeting with them. All right. We're going to make that a standard staple. If it's a once a month meeting, it's non-negotiable. It's always at the same time, same place. Do not mess with that. Okay. If you set this in place and you don't want mutiny, okay, you don't want people to reject anything else that you try. When you put this out, all right, follow through. Okay, this is so important, all right? But what are we going to discuss on that call? What does the project manager need to come with and be prepared with in order to have this meeting? You want to make that clear. And again, just like the rules to the game, we're going to discuss these things in this order, right? You're going to have an opportunity to explain to me why it worked, why it didn't work, and we're going to make the adjustments there. We're not going to make any other adjustments unless we have that meeting, right? So on a monthly basis, this is where the plan begins to evolve, right? You've got to give it a certain amount of time. Again, I see it a lot where guys get 2 weeks into this and just the uncomfortableness of change, they just revert back. They're like, oh, it didn't work 2 weeks in. That you can't work like that, right? So if we're looking to change to, from all employees to subcontractors, and we only gave it 2 weeks of try, you probably missed an opportunity there, right? And we have to be in communication with the people that are affected with that, right? So again, these are the team to come and report. to share how they're feeling, for you to support. Again, it's a place where we're going to have very specific conversations about it, right? Super helpful. Okay. I've also put in one for a sales rep. If anyone's running sales teams, they should have weekly sales reports, stuff like that. If you want any of those, just reach out. I'll give you ours. But again, those big goals, those big rocks that we're looking to move, even if you're the sales rep, you should be having these kind of meetings as well, right? If you're the main sales, and Jonathan, I'm looking at you, like, we're going to put this in place with you next, right? Because again, even if you're an absolute sniper and you've got, you're on your game, right? There's still opportunities you're missing, right? And your team can bring up for you, right? It just makes you that much more sharper.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. Hope everybody got some value from today, and we'll talk to you shortly.